Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is Homicide Rates series where we talk about geography and the world and stuff. Except today, by geography and the world and stuff, I actually mean the country of the most murders, I mean why North Korea is the best country ever, and I mean the countries that are getting wrecked by COVID that you might not realize right now, and you might think those are three disparate subjects, but let me assure you they link together in the geographic sense, because first, let's talk about the place which has the most murders on Earth. If you were to guess where it would be, you almost certainly would not guess that the Vatican City, the world's smallest country by area. Seriously, it's called the Vatican City, but it's pretty small for a city even, let alone a country. Here is the size of Rome, here is the size of the Vatican City. You wouldn't guess that the Vatican City, with one of the smallest populations, would be the most dangerous country, and yet I can provide you this graph where if you adjust to per capita homicides per 100,000 people, the Vatican City in 1998 was actually the most dangerous country on Earth. Not just by a little bit, I should mention, but actually by a lot. If you look at the murder rates for all the countries on Earth, and then you sort from high to low, you can see how El Salvador has 52 murders per 100,000 inhabitants. That is insanely high if you really compare to the majority of the pack. Even countries that you might think people are getting murdered in all the time, like the United States, are all the way down here at 94 with 4.96 murders per year. The El Salvador is already 10 times higher than that, and 5 times higher than El Salvador was the Vatican City in 1998. Except if you're curious as to what actually happened there, why it's 0 every other year, it's because they've got such a tiny population that most years there are no murders, but in 1998, the Swiss Guard commander and his wife were murdered, which meant that a serious percentage of the people currently in Vatican City were killed in that year, and that's why the Vatican City was really safe all these years, except not really safe this year. The Vatican City, when you average out per 100,000 people, cannot have accurate statistics because even, if the actual murder rate is, say, 1 murder rate per 100,000 people, that means most years they don't have a murder, and every now and then they do. You can only average out statistics to a certain point to get something like this because, the truth is, if you take a look at the homicide rate in the world, you can see how, the same thing here of like, oh yeah, this is what it actually looks like. The geographic constraints, the size of each area, is really going to affect what an individual homicide rate looks like, but to prove another kind of bias against you, because again, this is a technically true graph, it's a little misleading because of the fact that per capita kind of breaks down after a certain point, but let's also talk about the fact that even once you adjust for per capita, like this map does, you can see the dangerous parts of the world, right? Generally speaking, South America, it looks like Russia, it looks like Papua New Guinea, some parts of Africa, and Central America especially, El Salvador as we already saw. Those are the places where there are lots of murders. Even like a lot of America is more dangerous than a lot of Europe, as you can see, just looking at this graph. But the interesting thing about this map, where a bias kind of hits into your head, is about geographic size. If I show you this exact same map, but let's just use Brazil as an example, which is in the greater than 20 category, which, seems kind of fine, except again, this only goes up to greater than 20. Using a misleading axis and a color system which only goes to a certain point really hides how bad some of these countries can be, because here is all of the countries on Earth which add up to, if we take about half the world's surface area, and we're not even taking the safest countries. We've got Russia in there, which is a deep red country, by the way, but if we take all of these blue zones on Earth, add up their murders in 2015, you can see how we get 59,012 murders. If we take just Brazil, with a population lower than the United States, let alone the United States, Canada, the EU, plus, the non-European countries, plus China, by the way, plus Australia, we're talking, over, I think it's about 3 billion people living in these countries right here, with the same murder rate of a country with a significantly smaller population. Wow, this really drives home the point much better than this one, because this graph having just literally 6 categories, and not really, again, less than 1 to greater than 20, there's a lot left off here, and also the scale in between slides very fast. You might think that orange is almost as bad as a, kind of purple, but again, in Texas, being greater than 5, that is roughly 10 times less than the, the murder rate in El Salvador, but it doesn't really look that way. It just looks like they're both kind of dangerous places. Same with Alaska, which apparently has a lot of murders. I wouldn't have guessed that. Also, Greenland, I'm assuming, by the way, Greenland's only here because they had a spout of murders, because they've got the same thing, where they don't even have 100,000 population there. It's super interesting, right? And, yeah, we can go through this, a billion times and be like, hey, how about if we use another one and we take a specific cause of death? Here are the homicide rates for firearms for 2017. Firearms are one of the more brutal and fast ways you can kill someone, and obviously this map instead just turns into a map of countries where firearms are the common method of murder versus countries where they're not. You get the same kind of heavy bias towards South America. In any case you want to look at this, you're always going to look at South America as a high murder place. But again, even then, even once you take, even once you say, okay, the one common denominator is South America, even then you've got to realize that every country has specific hotspots of murder. Again, the US is the country we have really good granular data on that's pretty reliable. So we look at the US crime rate, for instance, you can see how it's really heavy in certain counties, and in certain places it's next to nothing. Obviously, some of those places are just like Nevada, where like, oh, no one lives there, so no one can commit crime there. Some of those counties are like that. But there are also lots of just, suburban, or not even suburban in these cases, just rural places where, again, very few murders happen. And then there are some rural places where lots of murders happen, lots of crime happens, because this is a general crime map. You can see how, like, in general, even, once you're looking at the, if we take a map like this is taking the entire country, and, you can't make an accurate risk assessment. You can only make an accurate broad strokes how much murder happens in that region. But again, that region is a very broad sense in everywhere but America, where for some reason this map uses states. Anyway, this map hopefully illustrates that point a lot better than anything I've been saying. But let's move on now to talk about other types of maps, because recently I was I was talking to a friend about, like, oh yeah, one of my editors is 20 and lives in the United States of America, and he couldn't get a drink, and I was like, well, that's the legal drinking age in Korea. And he said, which Korea? And I immediately had to Google and find out North Korea's drinking age, and I found out that an interesting fact, because a lot of people think there is one good country. Let's be honest, there's one country in particular that's like, one country number one, my country best, every other country sucks. There are a lot of countries that have that same thing. I see a lot of Turkish people in my comments who are like, no, Turkey's the best, you just don't understand. I see it with a lot of Slavic countries too. There's a lot of countries that have this, we are the best, and anything that says we're not is just fake news kind of attitude. And, there's people in my country that think that. I have no doubts about it. But my point here is that you should never think your country is the best at anything. Even the worst places you can imagine on this earth have something going for them. Like, if you look at North Korea, wow, what's that? North Korea has a lower, more standardized, let's be real, right? 18 is the actual standard for a drinking age. Anything above 18 and you're just having a charlatan government. Maybe you could argue in the US, like, they drive a lot, but they drive at like 16, so you've got 2 years to learn not to drink and drive there, right? So like, the idea of having a 21 age for drinking, or 22 in some parts of India, as you can see, or, even worse, let's go to the Middle East where it's illegal. I would say, based on freedom relation to alcohol, the most common drug used, freedom to ingest things into your body, it looks like right here, bad countries for this. Korea at 20, we got, also, wait, it says red is minimum age is 20. Oh, it's 19 for South Korea. It's 20 for Japan, and then it's 20 for Iceland too. What's wrong with you, Iceland? See, no matter every country has a lot of niche things about it, because every country's developed over so long, and North Korea has a better drinking age than the rest of the world. A better, in my sense, the world. Maybe you think that's worse. Maybe you think that all these countries of ages, like, again, it looks like 18 has come across Europe. It's actually a lot lower in certain parts of Europe, and again, even in the UK, everyone has the same story of getting drunk, drinking vodka on a hill at age like 13. So like, in reality, drinking ages are a bit different, but legal drinking age is something you might care about. What about this map, for instance? Look at COVID-19 and how, oh man, Western Europe sucks, and also, so does North America, so does South America, we'll dive into that in a second. But look at this. North Korea with zero, it's actually no data, but zero COVID-19 cases. Where are you safest right now in the world from COVID-19? North Korea. Where are you safest from governments taking you away for having a drink when you're age 18? Actually a lot of countries, but also if you're age 18 and you want to have a party, it's better to fly to North Korea to do it than to do it in your own state if you live in the United States of America or Kazakhstan or, certain parts of India or the UAE. I'm impressed that it's not legal there. Good job, UAE. Anyway, so with that said, let's move on from this. By the way, what is Ethiopia? Is that Ethiopia? Doing 15. I have to check. The outline of Africa, let me show you my inexperience here. Yeah, it's Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a drinking age of 15. Ethiopia is the best country on earth if you think that a government shouldn't be telling you what to do with your drinking or not. I think that's fascinating. Maybe you agree. And the Gambia is at 17. Huh. Why do most countries agree on 18, by the way? It's like a universal standard, except certain places. But anyway, moving on from that, let's talk about the COVID map again. Well, wrong map. Oh, actually, you know, here's another fun map. Look how, Sweden, it's third world, as you can see. But the second world is North Korea. North Korea is better than Sweden in number of worlds. Because a lot of people don't realize that first world, second world means a line during the Cold War. It's kind of weird we use it to this day. I was going to make a whole video about how, like, which countries have moved from third world to first world. And obviously I know what that meant, but I was like, how about I talk about countries that have, like, gone from poverty to not? But the interesting thing is, like, it's hard to find a list of third world countries because third world is just this general describe of like, oh yeah, Africa remained neutral, so therefore we associate third world with Africa. Whole thing. Anyway, side note, let's move on to talking about stats, shall we? Because these same stats about like, being, twisted by the 100,000 people, this graph and this graph, which by themselves are just fascinating, kind of prove why when people look at the number of COVID-19 coronavirus cases in the world, people are a little misled. By the way, I'm going to see how much it went up since I last reloaded this page. It went up a couple of thousand. It was at the start of this video, that blast. That's nice, isn't it? Anyway, so with that said, if you use the Worldometer site, which again, worldometer.info /coronavirus, in case you're curious about this source, you can see a bunch of information, and you can see how the USA has it the worst, right? And then Brazil, and then Russia, and then India, and then the UK, etc, etc, etc. But it's worth mentioning that even if the UK and India have similar stats, India has 20 times the population of the UK. And similarly, something that's worth mentioning, because everyone is focusing on the countries with the highest absolute numbers, and that is scary to some extent, because again, this number about hit 10 million. That's a huge proportion of the population. The death count will hit 1 million before this is all said and done. That's a scary thing to think about. But the scary thing is, like, as a proportion of the population. And the reason I brought this whole thing up is because if we look at total cases per million population, Qatar comes up, a country of less than 3 million people. Then San Marino, a country of 33,000. Then the Vatican City, a country which, using the stats right here, has 800 people in it. Is that... I always assumed it was, like, in the thousands, but I guess it's hard to, like, measure the Vatican City population, which means that 12 people in the Vatican City have COVID-19, but yet that is 14,981 cases per million. It's insane that this, the Vatican City looks worse on a per capita basis than a country like, the USA, which has 330 million people and 2 million cases. It is absurd that it looks that much worse, because there is something about a higher population where bigger problems do scale. If, a country like, the micro-states of Europe, the San Marinos, the Liechtensteins, the Andorra, and Monaco, if you look, all of them are probably going to be fairly high up on here, I imagine. Actually, wait. So, first of all, San Marino is at 2. Andorra's at 5, sure, but then the other microstates can be super low down, not because the problem is so much better or worse in any of them than the other ones, so I'm actually looking down here. They're looking like they're pretty low down. Maybe the microstates have nailed it. Liechtenstein's all the way at 54th ranked in the world, so they're doing pretty well in cases per 1,000. Where is Monaco actually? So Monaco is somewhere below the world average, and it's not because Monaco's doing this amazing job that Liechtenstein is not. It's because they're all such small use cases that the random variability is more important than the handling by the country or the severity of the country. Anyway, so that said, the interesting thing that's happening right here that you don't see when you look at the world, that also total cases. When you look at the world leaderboards, again, this is a dark way to see it, but it is the leaderboards of COVID-19, right? Like, USA has been winning this, but Brazil is making a strong, stance trying to catch up, having the highest number of cases in one day yesterday. But like, when you look at the world leaderboard for this stuff, it looks like, Russia's catching up, so Indian. These are just high population countries finally, kind of adjusting to the numbers. The countries where this is actually becoming more of an epidemic than we've seen anywhere else are countries like Peru. Peru has the same number of cases as Italy, more or less. It's going to be the same as of tomorrow. It'll be higher as of 3 days from now. But despite that fact, Peru has 1/2 the population that Italy does. Peru has it double as bad as Italy, which is kind of a big deal, right? If we look at Chile, for instance, and they're being similar to Germany. Germany has 4 times the population of Chile. That is a 4 times as big problem. Pretty big deal, I would say. A lot of actually South American countries have this same kind of problem brewing, where if you look at the per million cases, they're going to be super, super high up here. Chile's at 6th now, Peru's at 9th. We'll find another one here that's pretty high. There are countries, Argentina I know is pretty high up in here. A lot of countries are now starting to really zoom up the ratings, the leaderboards, not in total cases, although also in that too, but mostly in the sense of the per million cases. And like I said, the way people. When people look at the media, they see the COVID-19 thing as this global pandemic, and it is a global pandemic in the sense that it's happening everywhere in the globe, but it's moving around the globe in terms of its epicenter. And the epicenter started in Italy, moved to the rest of Europe, then moved to America, the United States, I should say, or there's going to be one pedantic, person in the comments. But, then it moved to America, and then from America, it moved to South America. And, even though you don't see it in these deaths yet, the deaths follow the cases. It's like a certain amount of lead time, which is why slowly, you're going to see this thing. And after South America, who says where it will hit next? It's obviously not going to get Australia and New Zealand, but that's why the fear is then the other Asian countries that did not really get it too much in the first wave, as well as Africa, the countries which, admittedly, they have like the worst and the best. They've got the best because they've got a super young population in most African countries, and they've got the worst because the number of hospital beds that a city might have in the US or Europe is the number of hospital beds that a country might have in Africa, and that's like a well-equipped country. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting things about where this goes from here, but bear in mind it's all per capita and it's a moving situation. And also bear in mind, I see so much vitriol online about like, hey, you guys wearing your masks. I wish I had a mask around here right now. Damn it, I should prepare my props better for these videos. I am an amateur. God damn. I'm gonna pretend this is a mask. This is the rich person mask in Europe. So like, oh yeah, I am wearing my face mask. This is what I'm doing right now. But the interesting thing is like, I mean, that's probably a good precaution anyway. Regardless where you're on the world, why not do it if you want to? But the thing about like, should you be social distancing extra hard? Should you be avoiding everything? Is actually a really regional-based decision. Every country is doing it on a government-wide level because governments work at governments work at either like state or depending on the government, it works at the level of the country or the city or the province or whatever. But governments work across the entire thing. They can only send messaging across the entire place. The mayor of London can't be like, oh yeah, in North London we're pretty safe, but in South London it's a mess. So stay home if you live south of the Thames, and if you live north of the Thames, you know what? Don't go to the shops too often, huh? You can't send different messages to different populations, and that's why even though, for instance, the Shetland Islands and Orkney Islands are pretty safe in the UK, they are still following the same government advice as the rest of the UK. That is why, in the United States, there is no central... a lot of people say like, oh yeah, the US has failed on its COVID response, and it's like, there's 50 states. Some of those states have failed on their COVID response. Some have not. It's hard to be sure because obviously like there's a certain amount of randomness because smaller populations. But like you can see how, for instance, a state that has put down a bunch of protections, California, is still, despite having for 3 months now doing... It's called something dumb because in America they don't want to call it lockdown. It's like shelter in place, except it's legally enforced shelter in place in places like California. But despite that, you can see how a state of similar population... the population of California is about the same as Texas. It's a little bit higher, but sure. The per million cases is higher in California, where they've been locked down for a while, than it is in... where is California? Pretty low down the list. But it's higher in there than it is in Texas, despite the fact that Texas opened up like 3 weeks ago. And same in Florida, right? They're pretty high population states that have a different thing, because a certain element of this is down to those decisions, but it's also down to random geographic spread. The way bigger deal than how your government deals with this is where you live and where those, how much contact points happen. You don't know the situation until it's too late, so it's better to be safe than sorry if you're in an at-risk group. But if you're not in an at-risk group and you live in, I'm going to guess it's like Samoa with the lowest cases total. Nope, not Samoa. It's the United States Virgin Islands. You know what? You might like to call them Virgin Islands, but right now, in terms of corona cases, they sure are the United States Chad Islands, am I right? There we go. That's the high quality video that I hope you enjoyed. Where is Samoa, actually? Is Samoa not on this list? I guess it doesn't count as fully America. You know what? If it's not on the list, they'd probably be really low anyway, so I basically get a win for that one. I would have guessed Hawaii would be so low down, even though I know Hawaii is blocking traffic from the other states. Guam, I guess, pretty good estimation. Maine being like, Wyoming, logical. Vermont, sure. West Virginia. But a real standout is the fact that Oregon, a pretty big state, is pretty low down here. So good job. Good job, Oregon. That's definitely how you say it, Oregon. Let me know in the comments down below that you say Aragon too. Yep, that will definitely not annoy people. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching. Also, I reckon the graphs. You know, I want to see the graph, just for fun here. You know, let's see the graph for Texas versus thing else. Because the whole point of this video was geography matters for everything in your life. For the things that might literally kill you. I mean, even now, it's not your biggest cause of death, but it's a big cause of death worldwide. The things that might kill you, which are both this and also, you know, this guy over here, and also, I mean, actually, literally, this might kill you. Oh, I found the link for the whole video. Things that might kill you and the fear you should have for them are very slightly... they seem like they can be summed up in statistics, but statistics accounts for, you know, like, statistics fails to account for a lot of things, because when you take a statistic, you're taking a narrow view. If you want a complete view, you have to stack them together, and that can be real hard. So instead, the Vatican City is the most dangerous country on Earth, whether you're scared of homicide in 1998, or whether you're scared of catching the whole, you know, this thing that exists in the world that I guess I should be cautious of saying the name too much in this video. And isn't that a lesson to learn? Boom, I nailed it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed, because I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Or maybe not. Maybe I will die before the next video. Always a possibility, right? Man, I need to have like a in memoriam video like ready. I don't want my last video to be some dumb video talking about the borders of, you know, like Sudan, you know? No offense, Sudan, but I just feel like I need to have like I need to go out with a bang or something. So I'll work on that now. But what you should work on now is looking at your geography and working out the population densities and what that really means for you and your safety. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye.